This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey, Matt. Just speaking a little quietly because it's late at night. I'm the last one up. Just watched Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan movie with the missus. She's gone to bed now with her little baby, so just down here Saturday night digesting it. Good Saturday night flick. It's kind of convenient that we hit the weekend pretty easy, relaxed weekend, and had like a nice juicy release like that fall into our laps. I think in terms of like big high profile popcorn movies, it's almost entirely sort of action CGI fare these days. So Shyamalan represents like one of the last of the sort of, this is pure popcorn fun, but it's not, superheroes throwing energy orbs into skyscrapers and stuff. So yeah, it's quite looking forward to it. I did see a trailer for it, so I'm kind of down for any Shyamalan since Sixth Sense came out. I think I've seen every one of the movies since then, and often been a champion of them when other people have disliked them. I think in the most extreme case of that, I consider myself a fan of The Happening, unironically. I think the ways in which The Happening is ridiculous and camp and stupid are brilliant, and I think the ways in which it's just legitimately a good movie are also very strong. And I mean that Happening energy is very, very present here in Trap. You kind of, for me, I'm in for a penny and for a pound. I get some entertainment value from the absolutely ridiculous dialogue and acting choices, just general filmmaking choices that Shyamalan makes. But I also think he's got a lot of like incredible talent, which I think, most people would agree that Sixth Sense and Unbreakable are phenomenal movies. And I just think that those strengths that you see in those movies are evident in almost all of his films, even though many of his films are not great in my opinion. But yeah, takes a lot for me to sort of just completely dismiss a Shyamalan movie. I saw a trailer for it a few months back. I have this thing where like I just kind of watch the trailer for every movie, like literally every movie that's going to get distributed. I'll watch the trailer just to see if any kind of like weird random things that I'd never have heard of would pique my interest. But instead of watching the whole trailer, I just watched the beginning of the trailer. And then by about like a quarter of the way through the trailer, I'm like, if I think I might watch this, I'm done. I'm stopping the trailer here. Whereas if I've got to the point where I'm like, there's no way I'm watching this, then I'll either watch the rest of the trailer and just go like, that was my experience with that movie, or I'll just stop watching it then if it sucks. So I knew he had a movie coming out, and I think I knew it was called Trap, but I didn't know when I started watching that trailer that was what I was watching. I was like, oh, Josh Hartnett's back, and this looks interesting. It looks really intriguing, and the trailer gives away the best twist in the movie. Now, I was very worried that the twist, which I'll say is the reveal that he is the butcher, I was very worried that was going to be like a third act twist, and I already seen it in the trailer, and I was going to go like 2/3 of the movie with this like tension, and then I'd ruined like a major reveal. Now, thankfully, it happens in the first 20 minutes, but watching it with my wife, like I mean, the joy of discovery of that moment, if you don't know it's coming, it was great that I at least vicariously got to see it. She was like gasping. She's like, oh my God, they're there for him. And I really wish I'd got that moment in the movie. But when I saw it in the trailer, I was really pissed off and I immediately stopped watching it. And then I realized it was a Shyamalan movie. And I was like, fuck, I would have seen that movie anyway, regardless. So anyway, c'est la vie. I did think at that point, is this going to be a movie where Shyamalan does his signature twist, but instead of putting it at the end of the movie, he puts it at the beginning of the movie. So you get like an incredible twist, but he doesn't do his obsession with twists at the end. And I was like, oh, that's kind of novel, because it is a fantastic little plot twist there. And unfortunately, as the film progresses, it goes back into him just wanting to do something you didn't expect at all costs. Right? He'll do, no matter how much it sabotages the movie, he'll want to surprise you. Just to go back on like a little bit of my history, which I loved The Sixth Sense, loved Unbreakable. Weirdly, wasn't crazy about Signs, and I've only seen it once, but it's like often considered his best. And just didn't work for me, but I need to revisit that. Loved The Village, liked Lady in the Water, liked The Happening, and I don't think I'm missing one there. I think then we get into the movies that aren't really his thing, like The Last Airbender and After Earth, which I didn't like at all. Then he has to come back with The Visit, which I loved. Then Split, which I loved. And then he's back in his sort of like, he's got the power again. And then he makes Glass, which I thought was horrifically bad. And then I think the next one was Old. And I didn't like Old, and I didn't really like Knock at the Cabin, but at least those two movies were like, he's doing his thing. And he's one of the only people out there who's making kind of movies that aren't supposed to be taken as super serious arty movies, but is just doing his thing. He's making popcorn entertainment, but completely on his own terms, which is like, that's so rare. That's almost like unheard of. In fact, I think he completely finances the movies himself, because he's like, no, I'm gonna go away, make a movie, give it to, a major studio to distribute, make a shitload of money. And, it's a nice little engine. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kevin Smith, but different. Obviously, the movies are nothing like each other, but that kind of like, I'm making pretty mainstream popcorny stuff here, but it's all me. I'm in charge of everything. So whilst I didn't really enjoy Old or Knock at the Cabin, I did respect that, like, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do. Now, this one is kind of a return to form for me personally, my taste. The first half, or I can't quite remember how long it is until they leave the concert, but everything at the concert is good, at the very least good, sometimes great. Never, I mean, put it this way. Is it ever great on the level of like, I can't find any flaws with it? No, there's not really any moment or sequence in the film where I'm like, this is just perfect filmmaking. But is it ever great on the level of, I couldn't be happier to be watching this? Yes, absolutely. It's very entertaining, an amazing idea, like a phenomenal idea. As the movie continues, it makes less and less sense as an idea. Like that the Taylor Swift character would go along with, like would be up for doing this. That ultimately that we find out that the wife would consider this like a reasonable way to do what she's trying to do. Like the whole thing just completely crumbles. But the idea of a like clean cut all-American dad taking his daughter to a concert and then just shitloads of SWAT teams and cops and everything like lining up, blocking every exit, and thus finding out he is a serial killer and he's going to have to figure out a way to get out of there. That's just brilliant. Like it's so rare that you see a idea for a movie that's amazing and I haven't seen it before. Like I've just never seen that film before. So kudos to Shyamalan at this stage in his career, like coming up with great ideas like that. And they write it for kind of as long as they can, maybe. I mean, I do wish that the whole movie was, I wish it was like a 70-minute movie and it was all at the concert. It's one of these, like, there's a lot of films, like Speed is a classic example, where you've got the movie that you remember, that's the iconic movie, and everyone thinks of the movie as being such and such thing. But then if you actually go back and look at it, that's only about half of the movie, and the rest of it is all, much lesser scenarios than that. I think that the film was at its best when we knew very little, when it was just kind of inferring little details, rather than, it's that classic "don't show the monster" type thing. Like the more we get on him and his life and his family, the less credible it is. I was saying to my wife there, I was like, has it ever happened in real life that, because it's happened in movies 1,000 times, but has it ever happened in real life that there's been a serial killer that was like the peak functioning society member? Not like he had a job he kept to himself, but I'm talking like, handsome, wealthy, like just like the perfect kind of movie character, leading man type guy. He's like, he's one of the firemen, and he's got the wife and the 2 kids, and he's going to the concert, and he's going to PTA meetings, like, and he's just so charming, and like, there's nothing, he doesn't give off a like, that guy, watch yourself around that guy. Like, that's obviously an intriguing idea. I wonder if it's ever happened in real life. I like that this film is surreal in a way. Like, we've discussed a lot that we both adore anything related to serial killers, and most stuff related to serial killers is way more realistic. Might not be realistic, but way more realistic than this, in the sense of like, it's about police procedural and investigating and like looking through files, and it's much he's basically a superhero in this. He's kind of like Michael Myers or something by the end, where he's just Mr. Escape Man or something. But I like that we get to see a serial killer movie that is pure fun, rather than getting bogged down in any of the sort of, like, a lot of the serial killer movies are really steeped in a particular culture, a particular environment or something like that. This is just pure fun. And I don't think Shyamalan's capable anymore, at least, of making a film that feels real. That he's a master of plot, or at least concepts. Whether plot, is questionable, because the further you progress into a Shyamalan movie, the more questionable some of the plot turns become. But setting a scene, getting you kind of invested in a scenario, getting you leaning forward and intrigued and like attentive and watching and curious, he's obviously incredible at that. But when it comes to dialogue, like, for example, like the exchange with the guy selling T-shirts, the way that goes down, it's like, it's almost like Yorgos Lanthimos, where it's like, what planet is this dialogue from? This is just so, it's almost hard to get how humans speak this wrong, to the point where you go, is he that bad at it? Or is he just, this is my style, like that's the way he likes to do it. I'm curious about that. thinking like he could literally run his screenplays through ChatGPT and just ask for a polish on the dialogue, and it would come out a million times better. Like it's so far below AI levels of dialogue. But at the same time, the one thing you can say about it as a sort of like slight backhanded compliment is it definitely stands out as uniquely Shyamalan. And the acting, like I have always been a bit back and forth on Josh Hartnett. Like I've never thought he was a particularly good I've always felt he was a bit too sort of dark. Like, and ironically, in this movie where he's playing a serial killer, he's actually more bubbly and light and fun. Usually he's playing like a heartthrob or something, and he's much darker. But I think as he's gotten older, on the basis of this and Oppenheimer, he's seems to be a bit less serious. But yeah, I think he's a good actor. He's not a great actor, but I think he's fine. In this movie, it's very hard to pin down like how good he is in a way. He's got a natural charisma, like he's got a natural presence and a kind of movie star appeal that shines through in the many, many scenes in this movie where he's basically tasked with charming someone. And even when he's being sinister, like with the pop star and stuff, he's still commanding, and he's like putting on a show sort of, and he's enjoying the way he's interacting with someone. He does all that really well. But then there's other line readings that are, I wonder if Shyamalan is sort of directing him in a particular way that brings out just some really surreal acting, because there is bits in this movie where it's like, that's such a choice, and it's not a choice that I've seen from you before, and it is a choice that feels quite harmonious with Shyamalan's weird dialogue and weird kind of vibe in things like The Happening. And like I'm thinking back to like in Old, some of the stuff in Old, and like with the hotel workers and stuff is like completely bizarre the way people acted in parts of that movie, and that movie's stacked with like quite good actors. So yeah, it's a slippery movie in terms of like the acting. I can imagine two people walking out of it and one going, man, the acting was so good, or at least Hartnett was, and then another person walking out and going, that's the worst acting I've ever seen in the movie. But again, I do kind of like that because it gives you something to think about rather than just like monotonous, safe, middle of the road acting. His daughter, the pop star, like, fair play to him for building a movie around one of his daughters. Like this year, he has one daughter being the sort of ultimately almost like the second lead in a major movie, and then he has the other daughter directing a movie which he produced. So he's definitely doing nepotism right, but she really didn't work for me as an actress. I mean, she just isn't good, and she's not like there's worse than her. If she was in a Disney Channel TV show, she's actually like quite old. I thought she was like 20 or something. I was like, it must be his granddaughter or something, but she's 28. But if she was in a Disney Channel thing, or if she was in like, you know, just a trashy TV show, I think she could be all right. But in this movie where Hartnett is doing a lot of like interesting character work throughout, and every scene is just Josh Hartnett, Josh Hartnett, Josh Hartnett. Like him doing this performance is the whole movie pretty much. So when you see another actor like his daughter or like the pop star, you immediately contrast it to him, often because they're just acting off each other. And that girl, that Shyamalan girl, like she isn't up to that task. She was fine as this sort of onstage performer. And I assumed then we were going to get maybe like one or two scenes when it became clear that she was going backstage and stuff. But by the end of the movie, it's like, why are you still in this movie? She keeps on showing up in different places and like just immersing herself deeper and deeper into this cat and mouse game. But yeah, up until the point where they leave, you do have to go with some things. You do have to buy some things. You have to go like, would he really be able to get away with that? He's so smooth. It's actually really unique and interesting to see a serial killer movie where the serial killer is essentially James Bond. Like he's walking around like grabbing the police radios thing and like just so confident. I like the gimmick of hearing the FBI profiler describe him as he does his thing. It feels kind of old school, like Hitchcockian or something. The way they kind of like play off each other. It's like he's about to do the fire alarm, or she's saying on the thing at one point, the guy we're looking for won't be panicked. He'll be confident. He'll be looking for a way out. And that stuff was really cool. All the stuff in the stadium or whatever is good. And the pop star's idea to go to the house is madness. Like she would just let him off at the street corner and she'd be like, I've got eyes on him, I've ID'd him. That's the thing, it's the plot holes where you go, this person didn't need to do that at all to achieve what they were setting out to achieve over and over again. And as he keeps on wanting to drag it more and more on and on and on and on. And then again, like I said, it becomes a superhero movie by the end of it. It's funny, as I was watching it in the sort of first half of watching it, I said to my wife, isn't it strange how when someone's the main character in a movie, you want them to get away with it? Like you want them to kind of achieve what they're trying to achieve. Doesn't matter how bad of a person. Like we've seen a lot of movies about like anti-heroes, your kind of Travis Bickle types or whatever. But this is a movie where the protagonist of the movie is a serial killer. And of course we get a little bit of context that he's like got mental health issues, maybe stemming from abuse and stuff like that. But he is as much, you're not really going to get like a less sympathetic protagonist in a movie than this. Like he's literally just grabbing people, chopping them up. Seems very in control of what he's doing. And yet, because he's our point of view character and the odds are so overwhelmingly stacked against him, there's like probably 500 police out there, which I don't know if that's plausible or not. But anyway, never mind. This is very much a movie. I don't know about you, but I just immediately click into like, go on, Josh, get out of here, figure a way out. It's almost like a reverse heist movie where he has to like get out of the building or something. And of course you feel for the daughter, and I have a young daughter, and I imagine in 12, 13 years I might be bringing her to a similar concert. Now hopefully I won't have someone locked up in my basement at the time, but all of the stuff with the father and daughter, him wanting to escape, but also like I guess he doesn't want to lose the image that she has of him. And he kind of returns to that in the end of the movie where he goes like, I'm going to not see my kids grow up because of you. That is, I think any father can kind of relate to the idea of like, my kid idolizes me, but I really want to preserve that. And I really want to make sure that that is, the way that they always see me. And this is a very extreme case of like how far he could fall in her eyes, because he'd literally be going to like the most hated person in America. But even still, like it just works kind of thematically in a very kind of relatable way. So that's a nice little, I can just imagine this movie if he was just in an airport and he wasn't with his daughter, and he just, exact same movie, has to find his way out. But because he's constantly having to like pretend to her, and that element of it, just I think that massively elevates the film. But yeah, we go back to the house, and Then we go to a limousine, and then he goes through a tunnel. He dresses up in a SWAT costume, and then he's surrounded by a mob of people that somehow slips out and changes. Like, it's just too much over and over again. And by the end of the movie, like the literal end of the movie, the last shot of the movie, or well, there is a mid-credits jokey scene, which fair enough. I mean, Shyamalan is responsible for the worst comedic end credits of all time, which is the rap in the end credits of The Visit. But the last we see of Josh Hartnett is him pulling a bicycle spoke out of his sleeve and undoing his handcuffs and laughing. I don't know why he'd be in that van on his own, but it's again just like one of the million things that you got to sort of go, okay, that's the way things are in this movie. But yeah, by that point, you're in split territory. I actually wondered at certain points if we would get Bruce Willis in this movie as well, because it has so many similarities to Split, both within the film and then on a kind of meta level. Like, I was thinking how going into Split, McAvoy was kind of like this, he'd been a young actor, kind of like young boy actor, and career had like gone different places over the years. More sustained success than Josh Hartnett, who's basically disappeared for the last 10 years. But still, I don't think anyone considered James McAvoy a particularly good actor. And he was someone who'd kind of like aged out of the time when he was relevant. And then he does this Shyamalan movie where he's a serial killer. I think he's a serial killer in that movie, The Beast. Certainly a very similar type of, like, he is of known threat to the city type thing. And McAvoy absolutely killed it, and just like, it was considered a career best performance. And it's got a lot of the same kind of camp, heightened villainy type energy mixed with psychology. I don't think Josh Hartnett is on that level. I don't think he's reached the height of McAvoy in Split, but I do think he greatly exceeded what I thought he would be able to do. And I have got I've had previously a fairly low opinion of Josh Hartnett, so it's not really exceeding that isn't really too much acclaim. But anyway, I enjoyed him in the movie, and I would say by the end of the movie, it is a pretty trashy movie, but I enjoy this much more than Old and Knock at the Cabin. I kind of don't need cosmic world-bending insanity from Shyamalan. He's gone to that well a few times, and it's not my preferred brand of him. I want something that I can fully get my head around. It might be asking me to sort of accept a bunch of implausible things like plot turns and stuff like that, or pieces of character motivation. Fine, I can kind of go there if the movie is thrilling and engrossing enough. But yeah, don't ask me to just accept some crazy, I don't know, like, without going too deep into the last two movies, I was left with pretty much nothing to hang on to by the end of those movies. It's all feels a bit meaningless by the end, whereas this film feels meaningful the whole way through, even though it does become completely laughable in terms of like what's happening before your very eyes. But just returning back to that first act, or that first half of the movie, such a good idea, such a great concept. Wish I hadn't had the sort of 20 minutes in plot twist ruined by the trailer, because I think that's the best thing that this film has up its sleeve. And even right down to the end, like when he's sort of explaining himself, and he's like, I was just going to do one more and then kill myself, and like there are still interesting morsels there right up until the end. And yeah, Shyamalan's back, baby. What did you think?
Hey man, glad you got to Trap.
think, well, not that I think, I seen it on Friday night and it's now Sunday afternoon. So just getting this message in before the United Liverpool game that I may or may not watch, depending if I continue my Mass Effect playing. Yeah, Shyamalan. He's a interesting guy, isn't he? Like he said, one thing you can always admire about him is that he does his own thing, and people who do their own thing, for good or for bad, is what you want in your filmmakers. You want these mavericks. I think he used that word. You want these people who are in their own world with their own toy box and action figures and just love what they're doing. And I think he does always love what he's doing. So just to go by my relationship with Shyamalan, I'm presuming that's how you pronounce his name. Otherwise, this is going to be a very frustrating voice note. Just hear me pronounce his name enough times wrong. So obviously, I thought Sixth Sense is fantastic. Unbreakable, I really liked. I didn't like Signs very much when I first saw it, but I rewatched it in recent enough times. I'd say the last 10 years, and I absolutely loved it. In the same way that, I don't know, you got these Nolan films that almost hide the mechanisms in which he does things, and then you get movies like The Prestige, which is the mechanism of how Christopher Nolan goes about writing movies on full display, but it works within the story, but it totally shows the blueprint of how he goes about making movies, with time, with misdirection, with living the lie. And I think Signs is like that for M. Night, in the way that everything is geared towards the concept and the plot, and dialogue be damned and logic be damned, but because everything is in service of what the movie is trying to do. And I think that's built around the line where, I think it's Mel Gibson's dead wife that's saying, "Swing, Danny, swing," and then just everything leads to that moment later on. And yeah, so really like Signs. I can't remember the order of everything else after that. Really liked Unbreakable. Didn't like The Happening in the slightest. I thought that was terrible. Would give it a rewatch, but I just remember thinking that was absolutely terrible. And I think I was done with him after that for a while, not because I didn't like him, but I just felt like it was diminishing returns. Oh yeah, didn't really like The Village either, because by then I was quite in the groove of the type of twists, and I guessed the twist pretty early. Now that movie on rewatch is much more than the twist, and much more of a movie than you initially felt, or at least I did at that age, when it was all about the twist. There's lots more to his movies than twists. It's just a shame that he got obsessed with a twist, because a twist is one of the best things about The Sixth Sense. Then didn't see The Lady in Water, and I think I left him for a while, and then everyone was saying that Split was really good, and yeah, I thought that was fantastic. And I even liked at the end when we get the Unbreakable music, and it tied into that franchise. I thought Glass was really good story, but terrible dialogue. Well, maybe not a really good story, but it was really entertaining for me, but it was really terrible dialogue. So, but I just about enough enjoyed it. Then I also really like The Visitor. Or The Visit, can't remember which it is. That's really good. And I haven't seen Old actually, but it got spoiled. It got spoiled by accident by someone or some podcast, so I'm gonna have to give that a while. But so I was on the M. Night Shyamalan train. It's in Split again. Just a side note, by the way, you mentioned that what's his name, James McAvoy in Split, like that was a revelation. It was a revelation, but then I realized Filth came out before that, and then he's doing that in Filth as well, and he's giving a hell of a performance. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how he got cast in Split. So it was already there. So yeah, anyway, that was just a lot of introductory fucking talk to you. But yeah, so I was watching Alien Romulus in the theater, and this came up as a trailer, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't really know what I was watching, and because the movie started off, or the trailer of the movie started off as Josh Hartnett at a concert, I was very much, okay, what's this? And then before I realized what it was, and before the twist, the initial twist, that he's the serial killer at the concert was revealed in the trailer, I wish I didn't know that, and I was exactly the same, worried like you that would ruin the movie for me. And thankfully it didn't, and it didn't influence the thrill that I would get from the movie in general. All it did was take away from that initial building early on when they're on the way to the concert, and you don't really know what the story is, and he's just there with his daughter, and you're slowly getting him to see the cops here. You're slowly getting him to notice different things. That would have been nice to experience without prior knowledge, but it isn't essential, which is good. So my worries were put aside early on. And it is funny, another thing that I agree with you with when I was watching this movie. So obviously the setup, the serial killer goes to the concert. It's a big trap, and they're there to get him, and he's done some horrible things. And after I get a few little cool character moments of Josh Hartnett trying to work the system or work out what's going on, I turned to my partner, who I was watching it with also, and said, do you know what? I don't care what the fuck he did. I'm really on this guy's side in terms of I want him to get away with this. I want him to get away with this. Or maybe not for the whole movie, but I was just totally on his side that I wanted him to outsmart the cops. And you mentioned that it's funny how much you get on the side of the main character just because they're the main character. I don't think that's always been true to me watching movies. Like in The Shield, the main character is a very crooked cop, and I don't think I was actually on the side of him a lot of the time. Obviously, sometimes I was, but I didn't want him to get out of jams necessarily. Obviously, I can't describe the whole series with you, but there was sometimes when I was on the character's side, and then other times when I just fucking hated that he got away with it. And I think one of the differences with the character in Trap is that it was just so much fun to fucking watch him get out of these jams. So it wasn't so much that just because he was the main character, it was because I was enjoying the movie so much, and I was enjoying the fact that he evaded all these various forces and the police, that it was it was just something that you want to continue seeing. So early on, when he's in the concert and he's watching the different things happening and you don't quite know what's going on, although we do because we've seen the fucking trailer. But at that point, I'm not necessarily wanting him to get out of anything. But when I see him trying to get out and then being outsmarted and then outsmarting the police and outsmarting the roadblocks, or the officer block, should I say, by keeping an eye on this door, getting this person's ID, pretending to be a chef, and just doing these various things, and picking the walkie-talkie and having the arrogance to walk up to the police while they're having a meeting talking about this suspect, bumping past them to get coffee and manipulating that guy to tell him all about the killer and the code word and all these different things. Because that's so enjoyable and you just want more of it, you're just on his side, that you want him to totally get out of this. And because just the setup and the push and pull of the whole situation, it's just giving you such cheap sugar spikes, if you will, that you're not really taking it up beyond that, and you're not really taking it that seriously, and the movie isn't really interested in its victims either, or at least for a while, and never truly interested in its victims. And you know, the movie even gives us him doing dastardly things in the concert as well. So it's not just the sense of, oh, he's chopped up these victims, and it's the same kind of way, without getting too political, that people can consider food and not animals. There's a disassociation between, it's not quite the same thing. So we would have a disassociation between him being a serial killer and then him being a dad and him giving us entertainment in the setup of the cat and mouse. Like, he does push someone down a stairs, which is a pretty shitty fucking thing to do. Then he does put something in the oil that burns some woman horribly. So we are also getting him to do things in the actual concert that would potentially make us dislike him as well. So, but it is the power of, nah, this is fun. Fuck the police. Fuck the victim. We're just going along with this because it's fun. And you don't feel guilty about it. You don't feel like you have to analyze your own behavior, because we all know what we're watching. We all know why this movie's set up. We know why we're here. So good on Shyamalan for that. And you mentioned when we were talking about Red Rock West and Kill Me Again and these kind of movies, that it's good to have that well of entertainment where I'm not worrying about the morality. I'm watching it for the concept, and if anything, I'm rooting for the concept. The other thing is that it does give us the character of the daughter as well. Like what you said, this is just at an airport and he was trying to get out. It wouldn't be quite as tense, and we wouldn't be quite as emotional invested in the situation. I'm not saying we're emotionally invested in the character, but we on some level don't want him to get exposed either, not for his sake, but for his daughter's sake. And it's quite a setup, isn't it? Because it's almost like a superhero, or in this case, a supervillain, who is out with his family and his cover, if you will, trying to stop something happening, which would traditionally be stop the bad guys without blowing their secret identity. That'd be a great setup for a superhero movie in general, actually, from a good guy trying to stop something while blowing his cover with his family. That'd be brilliant. So we do have this constant thing where we don't give a fuck if the killer's identity gets exposed, but we do give a fuck that it gets exposed for the daughter's sake. And that's a really good trick of this movie as well, that works really well. And you were mentioning as well that in relation to the dialogue with the guy at the merch stand, he's selling fucking various things, and then he gets a good impression of the Josh Hartnett character, and that conversation would have been better written by ChatGPT, and you wonder why he did that and why they're talking that way. And I have a theory about that, and I feel like with M. Night, everything he is doing that seems weird is in service of the concept and in service of what he's trying to do with the plot, and him trying to keep you on this twisty narrative. And I'll give you an example. The concert itself doesn't even function like a concert. No concert exists like this. I think a character says at one point, "Oh, I'm really glad that the singer did a matinee show," or something like that. I'm thinking, what? A matinee? Who the fuck does a matinee? Especially if this is meant to be like a Taylor Swift. And then there's so many times that the characters go out to concessions and do various things. There's so much free time in the concert that the characters can leave the concert setting and... One second, lost my flow. Yeah, there's so much times that it doesn't actually behave like a concert. The characters are going out because there's a set change. The characters are getting to go outside to the toilet and everything because now they're switching all the stage between songs every 5 minutes. That doesn't even happen at a concert. You get 60 minutes of a concert and it's over. But in this, there's so many opportunities that the thing is set up where it's just so unnatural to how a concert would set out functionally. And I don't give a fuck about that, because that's all in aid of getting Hartnett outside again, getting him casing the joint, getting him involved with various different characters, getting him to work the angles. And like you said, that genius setup where he takes the FBI's comms and he's about to pull the fire escape, and then we hear the woman saying, "Oh, by the way, he's gonna cause a panic. He's gonna come," and then him counteracting to that. So we got all these moments that are allowed to happen because a concert doesn't set up functionally as how it would in order to aid the concept. And I feel like it's the same thing with his dialogue. Now, it doesn't work for me and it sounds so fucking strange, but I think in M. Night Shyamalan's mind, he is doing that dialogue in that particular way because it adds something to the concept and it adds something to what he's trying to do, in the same way that the functionality of a concert and how he goes about doing it adds to what he's trying to do. And I think he uses dialogue in the same way. And for me, I can't crack it. I don't know. It just seems weird to me, but maybe he has a certain reason why the beats of the dialogue sound like that. That's the only thing I can come up with of why it sounds so fucking insane. Yeah, and regarding Josh Hartnett's performance, I really enjoyed Josh Hartnett's performance in this, and I thought it was. I wouldn't exactly describe it as amazing acting or very good acting, but I just think it's so on point of what's going on in this and what we're meant to enjoy about this movie. And I also had the thought, has some of this ideas been left over from Split? Because I had that kind of feeling as well. But just, he's almost winking to the camera without winking to the camera. And I've never seen that done at this level before, where at one instance we see him putting on this performance of a guy who's really freaked out by an accident he's caused in the kitchen. Then we see his face turn and he's just like, changes his expression so much for us, the audience, where at one instance where he's pretending to smile, to pretending to be happy, and just, he's all over the place with his emotions. But it's just so enjoyable because of how it signals the changes of how the character is feeling. It's very basic, but oh, he's angry about that. Now he's thought of something. He's really happy. Ooh, he's pretending to be really happy, but now we see that cracking and he is angry. Just works so well, and he plays it at that kind of level where it's almost theatre-esque in how you have to convey all these things to the people on stage. And obviously we're meant to be the people that's watching on stage, the audience, but the camera is I guess the audience's gaze. I don't know, but yeah, it just worked really well for me. So I have to ask you a question as well. So you mentioned you were hoping that there wasn't a twist and he would just leave the twist alone and let the movie be and not try and shock you for the sake of shocking you. Well, I kind of never fully understood where the twist was meant to be in this. And it's a shame with M. Night Shyamalan that we're trained to look for the twist and sniff it out. So certain things that happen that are maybe just plot points, we focus on them so much like they're a twist. So I either thought that the twist wasn't very good in this and I kind of missed it and it was underwhelming, or maybe I've misidentified the twist, or maybe, which would be amazing, if the twist came early in the film. I think minus the trailer, the biggest twist in the film would be the fact that he's the killer there with his daughter. Obviously we didn't get that twist, we got it spoiled by the trailer, but if I had just watched it blank, that would be the big twist for me. Now, with that in mind, and let's just say that that isn't the big twist, what was the twist for you? Was it the fact that his wife left evidence for him to get caught by the cops and she set this fort? Is that even, I'm talking like Yoda. She set this in motion? Is that meant to be the twist? Or is the twist, which I thought was the twist, that he thought he couldn't feel emotions, but his wife made him really angry. So then he realized he wasn't faking his emotions as a psychopath. He was genuinely feeling all these things. So he could feel love, he could feel his family, and he genuinely felt all these things, which wasn't really fleshed out in the movie, and at the same time mightn't be there. Mightn't be there at all in what they were trying to say with the twist, if it was a twist. I think he was trying to say that, oh no, I actually have emotions because now I'm feeling something that's really angry, whereas before I didn't feel anything. And yeah, so what twist did you identify? because with the wife, the twist was that she was trying to get him caught at one of the safe houses, and then something she left led them to do the sting of the concert. So yeah, just curious what you mean by what was the twist, because I might have missed, like, or either I completely understand what the twist is and it's underwhelming, or there's something else there. Now, and as far as the film goes, I really liked everything in a popcorn sense of the concert. I wish the concert could have went on forever, like that whole setup. Everything after the concert is completely diminishing returns. And while I was watching it, I have to admit, I still enjoyed it, but I had it in my head much more that this doesn't make fucking sense. Why the hell are they doing this? What is going on here? We're off the reservation here, baby. But it kept me entertained and it kept me guessing. Whereas before in the concept scenes, it kept me guessing in the sense of, I had more of a logic to it. What's he going to do to get out of this? Okay, that makes sense. Okay. And then after we leave the concert, it's, okay, I don't really understand what's going on, but because it's a M. Night film, I'm going to continue to try and guess like I was before, but it doesn't have the same even internal logic. So I had that experience. And now what I will say, I even think the decision for the singer, Lady Raven, to leave and do that, go to the house, made sense to an extent. And I actually love that scene where Josh Hartnett is all out of ideas and he's already trying to get backstage. He's already trying to continue to get out of this. And then he says he wants to speak to the singer by himself. And then he just starts talking about carbon monoxide. And she doesn't know what the fuck he's on about. And then it starts to realize that he's the killer and he just starts saying it. I thought that was brilliant. I couldn't have thought that would have happened at that moment. And it did hold up to the film's internal logic. And it even held up to the film's internal logic that she would go with him, because it's not just the case of, oh, I'm going to leave and then call the cops and everything will be fine. He weaponizes the fact if she doesn't do what he says, that person will die in that room. And she weaponizes the fact that's already been established that he's trying to guard his secret identity and doesn't want to hurt his daughter. So she realizes that. And that's what we've been told as the audience up to this point, that he wants to keep his identity secret. And so I understand why she weaponized that by continuing on in the limousine. And the tenseness of that situation still vibes with the logic we've been given up to that point of serial killer wants to keep his identity secret, sets out the stakes that someone will die if the killer doesn't do what he says. He's not really able to commit the full bad guy because his daughter's there. And while the singer's in the room and in the limousine and coming to their house, then he's not fully able to do what he's meant to do. So she's saving a life. So the internal logic was fine for that, right up until that point. Then it really starts to fall off the wagon completely. First of all, I'll also agree with you that I think his daughter is really bad as an actress. She's good as the singer, which I believe is her career. She's good at all that fan interaction, being herself. The second she has to do some heavy lifting of, I'm really scared, I'm trying to be clever, I'm trying to battle the wits of this killer, really fall flat, because she's a very doe-eyed, Bambi, blank, CW vibe type actress at that point, and we're not really meant to believe this head to head. Whereas the better movie would have been him, or the movie that's been built is that he's meant to be head to head with the old woman. We see him pitted against the FBI. We see him pitted against the old woman, the psychotherapist or whatever. And then now we're meant to believe he's up against this singer, and she's not a good actress to make it work. And it just feels a bit disconnected. And then we get every sort of weird thing that happens after that. Oh, she's in the limo. She manages to get out. Okay, the movie's not going to be about that. He's somewhere else. He manages to escape. Okay, what's going on here now? And it's just like we don't need any of that final bit of the movie. And I was entertained, and I was just popcorn guessing, oh, what's going to happen? Is the wife in it? Is she going to be the serial killer? Is the whole family going to be part of it? I mean, that would be way cooler if the fact that the wife was in on it as well, and the two kids aren't. And that's why I thought where that movie was going, and that would have been better in my opinion. But anyway, that's not the movie we're getting. And then so then we get the family's locked out. They manage to get out the treehouse. Now they're there. The FBI is taking away the family. Now the family are back again. Oh, he's getting caught. Now he's breaking out. And it's just, what is all this? We had a cool concept here about 10 minutes ago, and it just went on and on and on, further and further away from the concert. And now in the cold light of day, it just went on way too long, and all that was bullshit. But while I was watching it, it was very entertaining. And then we get the showdown between the wife and, I think Alison Pill plays her, and Josh Hartnett at the end. And I'm thinking, okay, but you've worked so hard to bring the singer back into every situation she shouldn't be in. So at least now make it about the wits of them. And now we get this scene where it's the wife and Josh Hartnett at the end. And now she's the protagonist for the final 10 minutes. And now we're meant to see a battle of wits between these two characters and her confession. And then he's, at this stage, it's just totally all over the place. He's getting in the van, and we know he's going to get away in the van at this stage. But what's the idea of your movie anymore past this part? There's no idea. There's nothing that's going on anymore by the time we've left the concert. What is he now? Is he going to get caught? Is there any retribution? Is there any repercussions? He's never going to get caught. There's very little going on, even though there's a hell of a lot going on. And I think that's the problem. But overall, I have to say I enjoyed it a lot, and more power to the movie, and always kept me entertained. So you say M. Night is back, baby. I think this is what we like about him, for better or worse.
Hey man, just watched the Liverpool United game. Great result for us. And might have to cut this voice note short because my wife's doing bedtime upstairs with our toddler, but she might have to tag out and me swap in. I'll see how much I get in now anyway. Yeah, great to hear your voice note. I mean, literally agree with pretty much everything you say. Like your experience with the movie, minute to minute, on an emotional level, kind of all your thoughts on it. Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, it's actually interesting because I would imagine this is a very divisive movie. Looking at this movie, it kind of looks like the type of film that is going to almost like no two people are going to really agree on its quality and what works and what doesn't work. But I've been proven wrong by your analysis there because, like I said, pretty much lockstep with everything that I thought and felt as I watched it. Although we differ somewhat in terms of his career in general and stuff, but yeah, taking notes on what you said. So I'll kind of run through some of the things that you raised. First, just touching on a few points that you mentioned at the beginning of your voice note that weren't specifically related to Trap. You say that Old was spoiled for you, or the twist in Old was spoiled for you, so you haven't gone around to it yet. I don't recommend Old at all, but I will say it's not a movie that can be spoiled. I mean, it's kind of like Trap in the sense of you may know the core concept, but just like Trap, that core concept is unveiled in like the opening 20 minutes. and then it's just nonsense after that. And if any of the stuff after the reveal that's 20 minutes into Old has been spoiled for you, then that won't affect your viewing experience whatsoever. So you might as well watch it just to kind of fill in the blanks. Probably ideal to watch it with the lowest possible expectations. And yeah, I also disagree that James McAvoy showed what he was capable of in Filth. I did see Filth before Split and found it a pretty cringe performance. In fact, reminded me a bit of when DiCaprio started trying to become a serious actor in things like The Aviator and Gangs of New York. And it was just like, this guy will never be what he's trying to be. And then in both cases, I was proven wrong. McAvoy and DiCaprio went on to deliver incredible performances, but yeah, Filth for me was not the one. Although you're right, it might have got him the role in Filth in Split potentially, but Split was the one where it was like, holy shit, this guy's going to be around for a while now. He wasn't just like a young actor type thing. Moving on to Trap, you're talking about how like the film manages to get you on side of the main character and how you're not always on the side of the main character just because they're the main character. You reference The Shield. I agree. There's certainly movies. I mean, for starters, there's many movies where they're not even an anti-hero. They're just a legitimately good person, but you're still not on side with them because you just find them kind of annoying or irritating. But I do think there was a phenomena of, if you make someone the sort of point of view character or the main character in the sense of like the film starts with them, right? That definitely gives them an advantage. It's not a guarantee that you'll be on side with them, but it is a surprisingly effective device in terms of creating a degree of investment from the audience. But yeah, you're quite right in saying that like it's not job done at that point. I think it's difficult to know with a film this messy and chaotic what's intentional and what's happy accident. But I will give Shyamalan the benefit of the doubt because I respect him a lot. So I would say that Shyamalan as a filmmaker is sort of doing the same job as Josh Hartnett's character in this film. And also, anything I'm about to say now really for the next while is pertaining to the first half of the film or the first 2/3 of the film, whatever the concert is, because to me that's the film and that's what we're talking about here. Afterwards, I'll move on to that later, but what he's doing in that section of the film, that thing where he's a dangerous, questionable, dubious entity, much like this film. I don't know, the film's not dangerous, but it's potentially dangerous in the way that it's like, you've got a main character who's a serial killer. Okay, this isn't necessarily the easiest thing to pull off, but his way of getting away with that is by just charming the hell out of you. And like you said, Shyamalan does that by making the film incredibly fun. We are naturally programmed to side with someone who's trying to surmount incredible odds stacked against them. We're naturally going to side with, almost like on an animalistic level, we're going to side with a character who's boxed in and absolutely surrounded and outnumbered by opposition, and who's trying to cleverly and strategically work a way out of that situation. So there's so much that the film is doing on a kind of entertainment level, on a fun level, on a mechanical level, to make you want this guy to make it. And then there's so much that the character that Josh Hartnett plays, and I guess by extension the acting of Josh Hartnett, that is trying to charm and work your way socially out of this situation. He doesn't work his way out with a machine gun. Like, he works his way out with a smile and, seduction. It's very harmonious, that relationship between the character and the filmmaking for that concert section of the movie. So yeah, I agree. It's not always the case that you side with the main character. I do think that putting someone as the main character or the point of view character immediately just inherently makes you much more invested in them than if they were just a supporting character in the movie. But yeah, the film has a lot of other tricks up its sleeve to get you on side. It's also just worth mentioning, like, I didn't say this in my first message, and I think you really mentioned it there as well, but it's incredibly impressive on a technical level what they've pulled off in this film in terms of the amount of extras involved and the location and capturing it and capturing the concert. Of course, like you said, it's not realistic, the structure of it. And like right from the get-go, this film is constantly firing things at you, which, as you say, are contrivances, conveniences, things to make the film work, where you have to just accept them. You have to go, yep, not realistic whatsoever, wouldn't happen, wouldn't be that easy, wouldn't be that accessible, you wouldn't have that option, it wouldn't go that way, this isn't realistic, but it's the more entertaining path, and it gives us the next chunk of the movie. And, you know, if you can accept people getting out of unlikely scenarios in Star Wars or Indiana Jones or something like that, you know, you can accept it here. Things, it's like, why does everyone shooting at James Bond have such bad aim? So we can get to the next part of the movie and he doesn't die in the first 5 minutes. You know, you have to accept that this is not The Wire. This isn't trying to capture the reality of the world. This is fun, a fun caper essentially, except instead of, you know, some like nobody innocent getting hurt, we're following a serial killer called the Butcher. So that's interesting, and that's done very well. And I agree, the concert section of this movie is brilliant. It's brilliant both technically. I love with so much interesting information on screen, so many different levels of people, like, I mean, by levels of people, I mean literally like different balconies and stuff. Like, there's just so many places you can put the camera, and there's so many different ways that you can shoot this. We see scenes that are inside a toilet cubicle, and we see scenes that are in a giant stadium, and it's just, yeah, there's a lot of A, visually interesting content, but B, hard to actually pull off. And let's not forget, this is an indie film. This is entirely financed by M. Night Shyamalan, as far as I'm aware. I mean, he might have sought some other investment, but this isn't just him going to a studio and going, you know, give me shitloads of money. This is his own baby. It's kind of like Megalopolis or whatever it's called, the new Francis Ford Coppola movie. Anyway, I was impressed by that, just kind of the filmmaking of it. Not even like the filmmaking on an art level, but the filmmaking on just like, they've really fucking pulled something off here. We don't see films ever nowadays that have this many extras or that have this much stuff, real stuff going on. Because if it's a bigger budget movie, they'll have more people on screen, but they won't be real people, they'll be CGI people. And if it's a lower budget, more indie movie, they won't have anything close to this many extras. So just getting to see a bunch of stuff on screen that took a lot of organization is now a rare luxury. You mentioned that he's kind of like a supervillain, and how it might be interesting, like almost like to do a superhero type movie. The only movie that I can think of over this decade or two that we've had of nonstop superhero content that follows a supervillain as the main character is Joker. There may be others, but that Joker is the one that comes to mind. And I think Joker had a similar challenge of like, well, we don't want to make this guy so, we don't want to water him down so much that he's basically not a supervillain anymore. He's just a superhero, which is what they've done with Loki, I would say. But so we do want him to be someone that's not right. Like we want him to be someone that you can still go, that guy, that force in the world is a bad thing, right? And you would certainly obviously say that about Hartnett's character in Trap. But doesn't mean that he's not a compelling presence. It doesn't mean that there's no reason at all in a movie to want some things to work out for him. Do you know what I mean? Like, as you said, it is a movie. It's not reality. It's not like us opening the newspaper, seeing that a bunch of people have been killed and going, oh, I hope he gets away with it. This is a piece of popcorn escapism. And in that, I think it does a really, really good job of navigating that dangerous territory again of like making a film about a serial killer, but it's not like it's a popcorn entertainment film, which is fascinating. The Josh Hartnett performance is something that since I watched it last night and it's been kind of marinating in my head, and then hearing you talk about it and just kind of reflecting on it more and more, I've become a lot more resolved on. As I was watching it, I was a bit more torn. I was enjoying it like you. I was enjoying it quite a lot. I was quite comfortable with it, but I felt like it's the type of performance that could be overrated. You know, I think Joaquin Phoenix won an Oscar for Joker, and I felt like this is not on that level. Forget about Joaquin Phoenix, but it's just not. I felt like watching this movie, this is going to be overrated as a performance because we don't see interesting characters on screen, and certainly not in mainstream kind of popcorn movies. And there was some of those line readings that felt very Shyamalan and felt hard to reconcile with just a really good performance. Now, I'm more resolved on it now. I'm a huge Nicolas Cage fan, and I've always admired how Nicolas Cage has had no interest in restricting himself to realism when he acts, but at the same time has had great reverence for realism and naturalistic acting. Like, to be able to be someone who considers the entire palette of what you could conceivably do on screen to be an option, but to still be a master of like the subtleties and nuances of psychology in the real world, and just mix everything together from like high camp to really relatable small scale moments. That's what Nicolas Cage has kind of mastered over the years. And Hartnett here is kind of doing a similar thing. I don't want to overrate it. I don't want to like use too much hyperbole, but I love the performance now, I think. I mean, I think if I see him come out with a few more interesting roles, then I'll probably think even higher of Trap, because it will feel less of a weird Shyamalan distorted accident. Because I've just never seen him be a particularly interesting screen presence before, but this works for me. And again, I'm talking about the concert part of the movie because as we go on, it's less of a real character with real stakes, and it's more of a, like I said, Michael Myers supervillain, immortal, teleporting presence. And at that point, it's just much less interesting to me. As you said, you were enjoying it on a popcorn level right up until the end. So was I. Like, I wasn't like, should we turn this off now? Like, it's still enjoyable and it's still got some good stuff up its sleeve, but it's lost so much of what made it a good movie in the first place. Now onto the twist. So yes, the big twist in the movie is certainly the twist that happens 20 minutes in when you find out that he is a serial killer and the whole concert is a trap for him. That's a brilliant plot twist. As you said, it didn't really work for you or for me because we already knew it going in, but I was watching it with someone who didn't see it. I'm just holding my little baby son here now, so he might start crying. But yeah, we were deprived of what would by far and away be the best twist in the movie. Now, the twist for me, because you said you struggled to identify the twist, and it's twists galore, but the twist that's the big end Shyamalan twist, which he's wont to do, is that it turns out that the wife knew he was the butcher and she orchestrated the whole trap by leaving that receipt at the scene of the crime, blah, 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 blah. That is underwhelming. It was so underwhelming to you that you didn't even identify it as a twist. But I mean, it is the big twist of the end of the movie. It's the big reveal. It's the big, Shyamalan move. And yeah, this movie by that point is just a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat. We've seen him try to surprise you by, oh, now this has happened 1,000 times. And when you get to the very end where it's like, he's taken the bicycle spoke, which you just can't do that. Like, we're so far into impossibility territory. He's taken the bicycle spoke. They put him in this back of the van, but not with anyone. It's pure marvel. And that's why I said I was half expecting Bruce Willis to show up, because for me, Glass, which I disliked a lot more than you, it seems. Glass is a film that lacks any grounding in reality whatsoever. Unbreakable is fairly grounded, like it's a fairly grounded movie. Split is a much more elevated movie, but still holds together, still has some integrity. Glass, much like Old and Knock at the Cabin, is just floating around in the air without any, it just doesn't make any sense. He's starting to cry now. I might have to wrap this up. But yeah, it's got there. It's got to Glass territory by the end, where Shyamalan's one too many times, or 3 times too many times, said, you didn't see that coming, did you? And I'm like, no, but I'm not happy that you put it in the movie. So enjoyed the movie, fan of the movie, like it. It goes downhill. Like you said, some of the stuff makes sense, that they get out with her. Maybe they go to, the singer goes to their house, and it makes sense within the internal logic of the movie. But just because it makes sense within the internal logic of the movie doesn't mean it's where the fun is, right? And I'm not saying you're saying this, but the fun of this movie is at the concert. The magic of this movie is at the concert. And when he got out, I was sort of saying to Vic, oh, he did a good job getting out of there, which I know that every single thing in the movie was helping him. Completely unrealistic, convenient things. When he says to the guy, the guy goes, oh, I've run out of t-shirts, I got to go downstairs for stock. And he's like, oh, I'll walk with you. The guy would be like, no, you're a customer, what the fuck are you talking about? But the movie is constantly allowing him to achieve things that are completely unachievable because it's entertaining. So when he gets out at the end, it's not like it's realistic. And when I say the end, I mean 2/3 of the way through the movie. When he gets out of that concert in the limousine, I don't buy that he could manage that, but I don't know. It's okay. It's fun. If the movie ends 5 minutes later, but then once it goes into the stuff after that, I'm like, we're just not watching what we want to be watching in this movie. Anyway, as you can probably hear in the background, I'm being ushered away by crying, so I will leave it there. But yeah, let me know if you have any other further thoughts on the movie. But I think we both had a really good time with it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right to highlight the concert itself from a production point of view, and from a logistic point of view and a setup point of view, just how awesome that is. And it's amazing what you take for granted, because I did think it while I was watching it, but then I just settled in and I was having such a good time, I forgot that ironically that this isn't real in a way, which is crazy, because how he does the concert is amazing. And you're right, he did finance it himself. So apparently what he did was he got loads of extras together. His daughter is a legitimate R&B star. I don't know if she could fill out a stadium that big herself, but she composed 14 songs for the movie and basically put together a whole concert and got all these people in, and all the extras didn't know what kind of movie they were watching, and they got sent all the songs before the movie began, so they could, well, production of the movie began, so they could sing along with it. So by the time we get to the concert, everyone in there has already listened to the songs. They're meant to be there for that concert, and it just feels so real and believable. So it does feel like, in scale and tone and orchestration, that we are watching a concert. It's amazing what you take for granted. That is a special thing to see in 2024. Like you said, in the CGI, don't make anything big kind of scale of things. It's brilliant. And apparently Josh Hartnett as well was some of the extras maybe didn't recognize him or whatever, were consoling him for how he was acting at the concert, because they obviously just thought he was a dad not comfortable there, which I guess in a way how he was meant to act. So yeah, the whole aesthetic of it is brilliant. Just the space and the tightness and the amount of crowd, and then moving to the left and right of the seats, getting out into the aisle, getting to the back of the concert stage and to the front of the concert where he meets M. Night Shyamalan himself in a cameo. That all feels real. It feels so tangible. That's the right word. And that's just something you take for granted. But passively, it really adds to the whole feel of the movie, which is another reason actually why when you leave, you're almost missing something as authentic as that afterwards. Even the people in the street and the limousine and the streets, it just doesn't feel as well manufactured as the concert scenes. So you're absolutely right to bring up that's absolutely 100% a triumph of this movie in itself. And with regard to Hartnett's performance, you are correct that this will be a performance that's overrated. And I'm almost hesitant to say that. And you know what? I'll back up a bit. It's not the type of performance that is going to be overrated. It's going to be a performance that is put in a category that maybe it shouldn't. It's going to be talked about, and it's going to get very confused what kind of performance this is. This is going to be talked about in the kind of way of a real turning point in someone's career, in terms of, oh yeah, you saw that Hartnett in Pearl Harbor? No, this guy can really act. He's really like on another level. He's absolutely dynamite. And then if this movie falls onto your desk, that's not going to convince you of it if it's brought to you like that. So in that sense, it's very overrated. But there's another type of performance in Hollywood, and the Nicolas Cage comparison is very good. And yeah, in a way he's doing Nicolas Cage, but not doing Nicolas Cage, but doing what you mentioned Nicolas Cage does. But in a way he does something that is almost missing from a lot of Hollywood movies now as well. That kind of pure entertainment in a movie sense. He's not acting as Robert De Niro in Raging Bull. He's not these type of performances. He's just hit one of the highest notes you can hit in a movie performance. It doesn't convince you that that person is this character, which is important to mention, because I think when people talk about amazing performances, they're talking about Daniel Plainview, Daniel Day-Lewis type of thing. But there's another type of performance that Hartnett hits in this, and that's that. God, that was so entertaining. God, I'm loving this. God, I'm loving every scene that this guy is doing. This is so entertaining. Oh, did you see when he just looked at the camera like that and he smiled, and then he was really distraught in that scene, and then you see his eyes noticing that, and that's what's special about it. It's just really good. It's the same type of thing in almost like Samuel L. Jackson when he first started coming about, or in something like Pulp Fiction. You know, it's not a real performance in terms of I believe he's that character, but boy does he do the best job possible of making me love every second of that performance. And I couldn't imagine someone doing it like him and as good as him, because it feels like the character is written for him. And that's Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction. And I feel like this is kind of like Josh Hartnett's version of that. It's just endlessly entertaining. And again, like I'm talking about in the concert especially, although there is very good moments where he manages to do enough when the film completely goes off the track, but it's just that type of performance where you just remember that character so well. It's been a while since I walked out of a cinema and I remember the character so well. Just everything that actor brought to that role, and everything that character embodied in terms of pure balls of entertainment. It's been a while. I've come out of performances that are that type of prestige performance, to that really naturalistic performance, or those really low-key indie movies where I'm thinking, wow, that was a really good performance. Really like that character. But it's been so long since I came out of a movie that had a Hollywood feel and thought, wow, that was just a brilliant performance, and that was just a brilliant character. I just loved every minute of breathing space I had with that character. I can't think, it's been years if I'm talking about mainstream blockbusters. Characters are forgettable. It's everything but the characters. People would argue, I guess, Iron Man and Robert Downey Jr. and all those type of things, but that's not for me. But I guess that argument could be made. But for me, it's been a long time since I came out of the cinema just having that character embedded in me. And for the most part, this movie has that in abundance. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to say as well, for just why it's so easy to go with the character. There's a movie that I watched years ago called Denial. And it's so fucking strange because it's about a guy that's a Holocaust denier. Clearly, I think it's played by Timothy Spall. Clearly the bad guy. Clearly the guy you're not rooting for. Clearly the guy that you're detesting. And he's set up in that way. But the movie isn't set up in that way. The movie is set up, I'm talking about the plot beats of the movie. The plot beats of the movie are almost set up like he's the hero. And it's the bizarrest thing. He's challenging the establishment. I can't remember this too well now, but he he's up against a team of a bunch of lawyers, and he's trying to speak his truth. Obviously, his truth is bullshit, but it's almost like an Aaron Brockovich plot beat for someone who you're clearly not meant to go with. And he's the David to the Goliath of the good guys, and they're all bringing out this everyone they got in court to discredit him, and is basically ganging up on him. And from a moral standpoint and a character standpoint, like, you're totally for the establishment. But to make a movie in that way, in which there's a small guy fighting for something that would traditionally be the role of someone who no one believes in him, but he's going to fight his cause, and he's going to be proved right, and he's going to take it all the way to have his day in court, and he's going to fight, and he's going to prove something. To follow a character that is wrong under that arc is really weird. So one good thing that this movie manages to do, it puts our serial killer with the arc of somebody who needs to escape from impossible odds. And anytime it's impossible odds, you're just going to focus on that above all. And then it becomes an underdog story. It's if one man can outsmart the FBI, a psychological profiler, a fucking dungeon, which the concert essentially becomes, and all the time protecting his daughter, even though it's protecting his daughter from his horrible crimes. So the movie sets up in a certain way that no one's going to be, I mean, maybe lots of people are, because like you said, it's really divisive, but I don't feel like you're watching a movie like this if you're thinking, no, they need to catch the serial killer. This is this kind of Dexter thing where I might necessarily approve of what Dexter's doing, but he's my guy. And like you said, there is that power of, well, I saw him first and I was following this guy longer than him, so I am now more locked into this guy's perspective. Therefore, anything that bothers my guy is meant to bother me as an audience member. And you're right, that trick works really well. And yeah, with Hartnett, I don't know if we're going to get more from him in this way. I ultimately think his performance is one of my favorite cinema performances. And obviously I watched this at home, so I just mean traditional popcorn cinema characters. It's the first one that's going to enter canon of fucking characters I think of in ages, now that I think about. So I'm going to be seeing and rooting to see what he can give me next. I'm not particularly hopeful, but I seem to like him in Oppenheimer, but I have no memory of what I liked. But we'll see what he does next, man. I'm going to check the Wikipedia filmography to see what he has next. And we'll see what he does. Oh yeah, one other thing, now that I think about it. Do you know what I really liked as well? It was very bizarre and it worked really well. Because you know that this concert is bullshit, the whole concert and how musicians act and this showmanship and this, well, here's what I want you to think, and this song is about someone I lost, so I want everyone to hold their hands now and just clap your hands because this is really deep, and everyone claps their hands and they're really into it. And then, oh well, maybe if you say his name really loud, this guy will appear. And then he appears and everyone's losing their shit and he just comes out and it's like, yeah, I'm a star. I'm just such a star. And then everyone's losing their shit. And it's almost like normally fans give validity to that type of crazy egocentric, crazy type of showmanship and crazy type of arrogance that I fucking hate. Like I love bands' music and I love all that, but the level of wow, aren't I really important? Look at this. Look at this me. Isn't this really deep? And the fans, it's almost like if you're watching a comedy and there's no canned laughter, and then it's that famous clip that floats around YouTube of Ross and the things he does minus the canned laughter. And the canned laughter hides the fact that Ross is a psycho. And then the fans cheering and going mental hides the fact that this is absolutely cheesy. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is absolutely cringe. But because you're aware that these aren't real massive pop stars, because you're watching it unfold and that guy with the wig as well, the blonde wig, and just the level of importance and the way they carry themselves, because you're aware that these aren't real people, it just taps into so well how I feel when I'm watching these concerts to see clips of all these things where they're doing these type of things. I feel that in general, but because this is basically following no one famous and we get that reaction, it really highlighted how ridiculous all that is as well. So that was quite bizarre for me as well. But like I said, separate to that, the concert scenes themselves are like brilliant at mimicking an actual concert, because it is half a concert really.
Yeah, that Kid Cudi character that looks like the Witcher, and he's called the Thinker, is just such a classic M. Night Shyamalan not quite understanding the world. Like Old also has a rapper in it, like a fake rapper, and then the name of the rapper is Mid-Sized Sedan. Mid-Sized Sedan. Like I presume that's just M. Night looking at the crazy names that rappers have, and he's just like, they're just called any old thing. But yeah, it's, as you kind of said, there is a charm to M. Night's sort of weird way of trying to access human behavior to make his style of movies that, I guess it's kind of, as I said, in for a penny, in for a pound. Once you've watched enough Shyamalan movies, you're like, look, this is just the way they talk in Shyamalan movies. Almost like Dario Argento or something, where you're like, look, a bunch of the stuff in the way these movies are is pretty crazy, but that's just what he does. And, you know, you kind of go with it. I agree with what you said about like the trying to identify a category of performances that are great because they're entertaining, and not because they're realistic. It's not that Eddie Redmayne, look, I am doing emotion. Like, no, remember Joy? Remember that? Like, that's so boring to me. Like, it might be appropriate for a movie, like you said, Raging Bull and stuff like that. You might have a great movie that benefits from really great naturalistic acting, but what we see most of the time is just like terrible movies. In other words, the Oscar bait movies that have, that's how people act when they're frustrated, or when they're sad, or, you know, when they're learning something shocking like that. Yep, that's the way people act when they're doing that. You've made a shit movie which correctly identifies the way people act in real life. And just how many movies ride on that, or how much of what we as a culture look for in acting and praise in acting and kind of lift up as the best of the best in acting really just comes down to kind of an accurate portrayal of recognizable emotions is pretty dull. It gets old. And as you said, it's rare that we get the Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction where you're like, whoa, what's this? This is a new thing. It's almost like the difference between someone who's doing like painting that's completely realistic where, you know, I can't believe it's not a photograph. That really looks like, I don't know, an old crisp packet on the ground. I can see the reflection. It's got raindrops on it. I can't believe that that's not a photograph. And they did it all with pencils. Like, it's the difference between that and Picasso or something. I was trying to think of what performances I would put in that category. And I think the most common instances of that, because there's a few, like you say, going back, you've got like way back, you go like Errol Flynn, people like that, where it's like, this isn't realistic. I mean, that was before the kind of method acting, the realistic stuff, but it was like, no, this is a shtick. This is a really entertaining package I've come up with. But, you know, more recently, Schwarzenegger, I think we both include in that. Definitely Samuel L. Jackson's a good pull, but thinking about it, it's often in comedy, like Jim Carrey in The Mask, / Jim Carrey in that era. Like, that was a thing that came along and it's like, I want to watch more of that. I want to see that. I'm loving that. It's not real, but you're doing something a hell of a lot better than just seeing someone do something realistic. You're like, I will not go see a movie just because Meryl Streep is doing perfectly realistic acting. That's not going to make me go see a movie. If you say the movie's Sophie's Choice, Deer Hunter, it's a phenomenal movie, then sure. But just because she's doing that in some like boring latter-day Spielberg movie or something, that's not getting me interested. Whereas back when Jim Carrey came on the scene, like, I want to see more of that because that isn't in and of itself a valuable and rare proposition. I would say, not that I would put it on the same level, but like even things like, I remember when Jonah Hill first showed up, things like Superbad, like that strikes me as like, his thing that he's got going on is entertaining. And again, maybe it'd be good to find examples that aren't in comedy, because I think it is more prevalent in comedy that someone has like, they've got their sort of stylistic package and it brings a lot of entertainment value without being like just completely realistic. Because I think there's probably, I mean, Nicolas Cage definitely for me is an example of someone who has like, they're very, very entertaining on screen in a lot of their movies. I think Johnny Depp in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, like, of course, is slightly diminishing returns, seeing that over and over again. But I do remember going to see that movie in the cinema. It's a pretty solid, serviceable kind of adventure popcorn flick. But the thing that makes it is that, you know, someone showed up and just did a brilliant, incredibly entertaining performance. So I don't know that I'm ready to put this Josh Hartnett performance in that pantheon. I mean, you seem to be, because you said that it's like, it's the first one that's going into that category in years. I can probably co-sign that, but it just, you know, I guess I haven't had years of reverence for it like I have with Jim Carrey and The Mask. But yeah, it's a good distinction to make. And when you see it, you realize how rarely you actually get that. And also what you said, like, about the kind of underdog thing of like having the odds stacked against the character. I haven't seen that movie Denial that you referenced, but it sounds like the hook is, or at least the hook in terms of what we're talking about, is that they're going up against a massive, powerful machine of like, how the hell could they possibly succeed? Because there's so much, the odds are so greatly stacked against them, which is certainly the case in Trap. I mean, if one was inclined to interrogate the movie Trap on any kind of a realism level, which would be incredibly foolish to do so, you would have to ask the question of, really that many cops? Like that many for like a possibility that he's at this concert. Like that looks like that's half of the police force of Philadelphia. Like the amount of SWAT members, it's like you would scarcely get that for Osama bin Laden potentially being at a concert. But anyway, this is the movie, and I think that really makes you sort of in his camp. We recently watched the movie Kill, which I remember, and this is a good, an interesting example, because in the case of Kill, the character that you have as your point of view character is sort of on his own. I mean, he's got like some people that help him out, but he is more or less like a lone wolf throughout the movie, and he's going up against shitloads of people, the baddies, because it's an action film. It's kind of a Die Hard on a Train type thing, but he's so capable and so he's such a killing machine that you do, I think, end up somewhat not quite rooting for the bad, because it's not that you want the baddies to kill him, but you do want the baddies to escape. And they're bad. They're just like bad guys. They've they're trying to hijack this train, take hostages, do all this kind of stuff. But he's just making such mincemeat of them, and it's the discrepancy in the kind of power that they have is so great that you end up going, although you're the baddies and you've done bad things, you're like, it's now so unlikely that you'll succeed that I kind of want you to just like get to safety or get to freedom. And it's funny that that's just come into my mind, because it kind of stands as an example of a movie where you don't necessarily fully side with the main character, although it's much more murky than that. I don't want to get bogged down in like a dissection of Kill and how you navigate your allegiance to the main character in that movie, because it's quite complex. But it is that thing of like, normally when you watch a movie, you want, well, the ideal thing is it's going to be really hard for my hero to pull this off, and it's a real long shot, and by all rights they shouldn't pull it off. Now, of course, we've seen movies before, so when you go and watch like a Spider-Man movie or something, by the end of the movie he's going to have succeeded, right? But the movie's job is to try and make you feel like that's not going to happen. This is why, like, this is kind of the major complaint about Steven Seagal. Like, if you never ever let anyone land a punch on you, you never show even the tiniest hint of peril, or like anyone ever has the upper hand on you, then where's the drama? Where's the tension? And also, I think I've heard this said about the Die Hard franchise. In the first Die Hard movie, he's like scared. He's constantly in pain. He's being hurt. They're doing a real number on him. He's just barely surviving. The baddies are so much more competent than him, and he just keeps on managing to push through and pull through. Also true of First Blood, which we watched recently again. If you go to the later Die Hard movies, I mean, I think the most recent one was the one set in Russia, where he's just like, he's so never scared, never in doubt, just waltzing through the whole movie, easily and effortlessly taking down any opposition. And yeah, it's circling back to Trap. I think like it's nothing puts you investing in a character more than that underdog thing. And interestingly enough, like for the first 2/3 of the movie, which is set at the concert, he is very much the underdog. He's kind of not the underdog in the sense that he's basically James Bond. He's super suave. He's cool. He basically seems to have like almost magical powers of persuasion and luck as well. But practically speaking, the walls are closing in around him and he's going up against hundreds and hundreds of police officers. But when you get out of the concert and it goes on and on and on, and he becomes more of this sort of like teleporting, shape-shifting like spirit, you lose that. How is he going to get out of this? How is he ever going to pull this off? It gets to the point where it's more like, well, I don't even know what he is or what the limitations of what M. Night's willing to do in this movie is anymore. By the end of the movie, like, actually, I'm a huge horror fan, as you know. I love slashers, probably top 2 or 3 favorite subgenres of horror, and slasher sequels, which are numerous and often very popular and beloved within the horror community, generally don't do it for me, because I love the first movie where you've got everyone's fucking terrified because you've got Freddy coming after us or Michael Myers or something. But then with every successive movie, because none of the original cast are back, generally speaking, sometimes they get like the final girl back, but usually it's like a whole bunch of new lambs for the slaughter. And the one recurring character you get time and time again is the killer. Over 2 or 3 movies, it gets to the point where the hero essentially is the baddie, is the killer, the slasher like baddie. And it becomes very obvious in the filmmaking that you're supposed to want them to do the murdering, and you're supposed to be sort of punching the air with satisfaction when they do the murder. And I don't have any moral qualms with that, because it's movies, it's completely, it's obviously not to be taken as real. But in terms of drama and engagement, it's just not that compelling. It's certainly not as compelling as like, get the fuck up the stairs, like just shut the door. Like, that's thrilling and that's amazing. And I, have absolutely adored some classic horror movies, but horror slasher movies, that then in subsequent sequels I've just been like, this is just doing nothing for me, because I'm not here just to see gory kills. I want to want the innocent victims to survive, and once they take that out of it, it's just, it's about like almost fetishization of the antagonist. And Trap sort of gets there in one film. By the end of the film, this maniacal laugh that he does at the end when he's like, he's unpicked his handcuffs, and I think the implication is that his reign of terror will continue. That's kind of supposed to be like a fun, victorious moment. And for a lot of the movie, for like the first 2/3, I was like, I kind of wanted him to escape. I certainly want his, like you said, your concern for his daughter, and you kind of think he can't really survive, even though he ultimately does. But you kind of think he can't really survive because he is the serial killer. But I don't know. I just want him. I'm on his side. I want him to outsmart the cops and all that kind of stuff. But by the end of the movie, when you've actually kind of been given that in a way, and it's been done in such a hammy fashion, and his character has been elevated to the point of being like almost like some sort of genie or something. It crumbles. It's long crumbled at that point, but it's like anything I have left caring about that character is now gone, because the final stuff that we get, as you say, Josh Hartnett does good work in the final third of the movie. He's plenty of like interesting, menacing scenes, but even that like meager satisfaction that we're getting in the end of the film, I think, is more or less quenched in its final seconds by the little note that we were left on with Josh Hartnett. We're like, okay, I'm just not interested anymore in this, and I hope that we don't get a Glass type movie. We might even get a movie that's Glass but has the 4 of them in it, Josh Hartnett, and then the other 3 characters, although I can't remember who makes it out of Glass alive, if anyone. But that final note, and then obviously the little mid-credits button, It's reached right down to rock bottom at that point. But all that said, I like the movie a lot, and I think kind of like that crazy dialogue and some of the crazy acting choices, and you don't get interesting, brilliant M. Night Shyamalan movies if you don't let him do his thing. Avatar: The Last Airbender and After Earth are showcases of what happens when you prevent Shyamalan from doing his thing and having creative freedom and just like having fun and doing what he wants to do. Is clearly someone who's like so passionate about film, so excited about making movies. I think he's made like 3 movies in the last 3 years or something. And I'll watch 100 more Shyamalan movies with like impossibly bad dialogue in places, if it means that I get some of these like brilliant sequences and some of these like amazing concepts and just fantastic setups. I was so much more invested in this movie in its like first acts, kind of like setting the scene and getting there and like realizing the stakes and everything, then I found myself in a thriller in a long time. He just knows how to get your attention. He knows how to keep your attention. And then considering he has one of the most, if not the most famous ending in movie history, and is probably the director most associated with twists and endings, ironically, I think he struggles to end movies now. And Old, Trap, and Knock at the Cabin, although Knock at the Cabin was based on a book, but I think he changed the ending anyway. Those 3 movies have really bad endings. I mean, Trap is certainly a lot better than those 2 in its ending because it's just overall a better movie. But in all 3 cases, the ending is the worst thing about the movies by far. I can't remember Glass. I'm going to pretty much erase that entire movie from my head because I think it was just like bad start to finish. But yeah, and I do think it's because he feels there's some pressure. I don't know if he feels it's in other people's expectations or if it's just his own interest. Somehow, for some reason, he puts the onus on himself to make an ending that kind of subverts your expectations based on what you've seen up until that point. And it's worked really well in some cases. I didn't guess the ending of The Village, which you did, but for me, the ending of The Village is fantastic. I've heard people complain about it, but I think it's brilliant. Kind of like Trap, The Village is a film that's got several twists, kind of has like a twist every half hour or something. Certainly works in The Sixth Sense. I guess it works in The Visit. Very much works in The Visit, in my opinion. And I think elsewhere it's murky, but at this point, I just would like to see him do a movie that's a thriller and is like very Shyamalan, but doesn't have any crazy twists up its sleeve, crazy or non-crazy. Just it doesn't have twists up its sleeve at all. It just kind of gets the job done and thrills you and entertains you and then closes out. But anyway, best Shyamalan movie in a while for me. Best movie he's made since Split. I think Split and The Visit, they came out similar time and they were both really good. And then everything since then has been not my bag. This one, very much my bag. Yeah, I'd have to go back to Split and The Visit to see how it ranks against those 2. But yeah, really, really good. Really enjoyed it.
Hey man, just sending this voice note before I go to bed and start the week again. So yeah, there's that. Do you know what? Might feel so left field, but I'd love to see if Night Shyamalan do a James Bond movie or something where it's just total bullshit anyway, but at least we'd get a hell of a lot of entertainment. And then even if there was loads of twists, then that doesn't matter because Bond always has so many stupid things anyway. But anyway, that just popped into my head now. Yeah, it's funny the way the ultimate conclusion of Trap was, in the beginning, you're thinking, how is he going to get out of this? How the hell is he going to get out of this? And by the end of it, you're thinking, he's never going to get caught ever for anything. And even when he is get caught, he's always going to get out of everything, of every second of his whole life. He's going to find a bike spoke. He's going to be able to unlock keys. He's going to be able to do anything. So the movie starts off where you're incredibly invested in thinking this guy, wow, he's just not going to be able, he's not going to be able to do it, is he? And by the final, like 35 minutes, you're thinking, even if this guy is in solitary confinement in Fort Knox, he's always going to get out of this. He's just never going to be stopped. That's quite sad that we went on that journey, in a way. Like, having said how much I enjoyed the movie, by the end of him getting caught and getting put in the van and then getting the keys, I just felt, well, the movie hasn't ended. This will never end now. Where's the end point that we're meant to get to? This movie hasn't ended. This is just another sequence where he's about to get out, and then it's going to continue on, and then he's going to continue on again, and it's just he's going to get out of everything. So it's amazing the way the movie, a typical M. Night, by the end of it, the movie was the antithesis of the thesis that was set out to begin with. It's absolutely crazy how he writes. But anyway, yeah, I'm a fan of his. And you mentioned just people like Jim Carrey and how we normally see this with comedians and a performance from them. Do you know who springs to mind? And again, I agree with you with Nicolas Cage. The one that really springs to mind for me is William H. Macy and Fargo. When you first see that performance and the sheer amount of fuckwittery of his plan and all the stupid decisions he gives, and obviously there's Marge Gunderson, Frances McDormand, so it's not like you're following William H. Macy as the protagonist fully, but in a way you kind of are, because you're just enjoying so much of him pretending to be this Minnesota nice while also doing something absolutely vile and not having the tools to be able to get out of it fully, and being quite incapable. But anytime he manages to lie successfully and manages to even create a whiff of bullshit, you're kind of delighted for him, because you're just enjoying how much he's sweating in every scene before he's discovered that you're on his side in a way. Because every time someone asks him a question, he's like, well, I can't, it's been so long since I had it in my head, but you know exactly what I'm talking about, that cadence and that. Okay, well, Jerry, you're really, just how he goes about it. And I guess that's an example that sticks in my mind. But yeah, like you said, I was also invested in this movie in fucking in a long time compared to any other trilogy. You know, someone like Christopher Nolan and all these movies that came along, and things like Tenet and all this that is meant to be, here's the guy. Not to play him off against each other. I'm just saying that a lot of cheap shots get thrown at M. Night, and you can just create a movie like this that just gives you all that goodness and a lot of bullshit as well. But what I've come away with is the good feeling, and that's important to note. Even though there was quite a bit of bullshit, that didn't stay with me as much as the first half of the movie. So that's important to note. But yeah, gotta get up for work tomorrow now. And start grinding to the machine.
Hey man, Monday morning now. Just doing my daughter's breakfast before I launch into another work week. Yeah, good call on Bill Macy in Fargo. Definitely Coen Brothers have managed to conjure up a few of those performances over the years. Like The Dude would be an example, I think. A lot of John Goodman's work, a lot of it is sort of comedic, including Fargo. I mean, probably including Trap to an extent. It's that kind of delicious type of thing. But yeah, and yeah, I guess there's not much else to say about Trap, but it's good that it's got us kind of like thinking about these performances and thinking about Hartnett, and yeah, let's see if we can follow it up with something interesting.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.